to Coral Castle, back to Ed Leeds Skolnin. So he dies. Where does he die? In a hospital? Does he die there?
Jackson Memorial Hospital. In 1951, in December of 1951, Ed had not been eating correctly. And, some of the people that told me there, in fact, Mr. Bullard said that he was tired. He had done everything he wanted to do, and he was just, basically, to quote Mr. Bullard, he was ready to go. He got on his bicycle, pedaled over to the local bus station, bought a ticket to Jackson Memorial Hospital, and checked into the hospital there. And they said that he went into a coma, that as he got there, he was very sick, and the doctors described his condition as very, very weak. And they said he went into a coma, and they said he kind of came in and out of it, and 3 days later he died in 1951. And, that's when, the period that he was in the hospital, some thieves broke into Coral Castle there and looted it and, destroyed some of the stuff. And like I say, that's when some of the parts of the machine went missing. So we don't know what went on there.
Now, when we say thieves, how do we know they weren't people of authority? Here's an example. Nikola Tesla dies, his office gets raided, and all his plans are taken away for free energy or harnessing energy from, the solar system and from space. And so how do we know this didn't happen to Ed?
George, it's almost a no-brainer that it did happen that way. And the best way to cover that is to say, thieves broke in. Well, what were they going to steal? He didn't have any money there except for what he hid there, and they didn't know about that. So what could they really steal? His crystal radio set? There was really nothing there. So it's almost apparent that it was looted and for a reason.
Man. Of everything you've investigated, Joe, I know the book is Waiting for Agnes is fiction based on fact.
Right.
But what has perplexed you the most, fascinated you the most about Leeds Skolnin or the Coral Castle?
Oh gosh, George, I could spend 2 hours. There is so many things there that, like the rock telescope and the sundial, and one of the things, I think the thing that gets me the most is here is a man supposedly with no education, fourth grade education, and he wasn't just a Mason, George. He was I think what I love the most is he was a scientist, and he did his own work. He proved his own things. He never wasted anything. For example, when he was digging his first trench to try to get down to the bedrock, he didn't waste the soil, George. He every little piece of gravel and sand, he separated it into different piles for use in something later on. So what gets me about the man is he, just like the Native Americans, when they shot a buffalo, they used his foot, his tail, his tongue. That was the key and the secret to what made Ed different than everybody else, and his eye for detail. George, he loved, and I'm a kid at heart. I'm the same way. We have lizards here in Florida, the little green ones that run around, and I watch them and spiders. I'm particularly fascinated by spiders, and so was Ed.
You can have them.
Yeah. Well, he used to catch flies and throw them in the webs there down there just to, watch the spiders come in and watch how he loved them because they were engineers. If he watched their webs. So he was such a person, and he spent, remember, a lot of time alone. And I guess I'm an only child, so I did a lot of the same things he did. I had to entertain myself. And I found so much that I related to him. Of course, I don't have the brain that he had, but his knowledge and his ability to decode things, I think, is what people have no concept. And the thing was, George, he never bragged. He never said, look at all these things I've done. And, George, you could write a 1,000-page volume on the delicate interest. Well, I'll give you an example. He took his watch in to be cleaned one time, and the watchmaker down there said when he took the watch apart, the spring had actually broken there, and Ed had heated the ends of it and connected it back inside the watch exactly. The only thing kept it from running was cleaning it. The watchmaker said only a few watchmakers in the world would have had the finesse to do that. So the man can cut stone and yet fix a watch.
A minute little thing.
A minute thing. And he was an artist, he was a sculptor, he was a scientist, much in the form of Da Vinci and all the great inventors. And I think the thing that captivates me also, George, is that here we have this amazing man. Like we talked about last time, Einstein was genius, but he never lifted 30-ton stones. Why has the man been forgotten? And that still bothers me to this day, and I think it's what drives me, George. And one thing I'll mention about Agnes, and the reason I think she existed, from what I can understand, her mother was very opposed to the marriage because she didn't feel that Ed was of the highest quality. And if you remember, Ed described Agnes as being well-bred,
right,
which means she came from a better family.
Some kind of royalty, maybe, of Latvia at the time?
Exactly, I think so. And I think that this drove Ed. You know, if you look at all the geniuses, they said one thing that fascinated Einstein, one thing that they said, well, what was the one thing that clicked in his mind that made him go into all these different theories? And they said, one simple thing, the compass.
The compass.
And they said, why? And he said, here's a force that moves a needle that I don't understand. Okay, so that drove him. So what drove Ed, I think, to succeed more than anything else? And they said when he got done at Coral Castle, one of the things he did was he would tell people on the tour, now look, don't ask a lot of questions until I get through with the tour because I want to be able to finish the tour. But when he got done, he would stand on a stone platform and just beam and grin like, you know, look at this that I've done. And he would say, now you can ask any questions you want, do anything you want to do, the place is yours. He was so proud of it, George. And I think he was finally standing on that platform saying, okay, Agnes's mother, look what you threw away.
What did the inside of his living quarters at Coral Castle look like?
Oh, this is great. And he would never allow anyone into his quarters. Okay, that was very private, and he would not allow it. And a lot of words were, well, is he storing his treasure map in there? You know, what is this guy doing? Why? Well, he gives a tour, but he won't let us go in to see what his living quarters were like. Well, when you walk in his living quarters, George, remember now, in the time he had tuberculosis, he actually took his bed. Now, he took a couple of 2x4s, or I guess I should say 4x4s. He covered them in burlap bags, strung them together, nailed them together there, and then he hung the whole thing from chains from the ceiling. Now, there was two purposes of this. He would sleep at an angle so that fluid would not build up in his lungs, okay? And also, later on, when someone asked him about it, he said, you know, I'm a bachelor, so I have to do all the cooking and cleaning. And he said, so I don't want to sweep under my bed, so I keep it suspended from chains in the daytime to sweep under it. Now, inside here, you've got to remember now, this is rough coral stone in there, okay, that's been smoothed into blocks. Okay, now, he went to the junkyard. Remember, all his tools came from there. Well, he took the bumpers off of cars, and I still don't know how he did this. But when you look in the corner there, you know how people build little corner racks there? Well, his corner racks consisted of car bumpers that are inserted into the walls. He would actually climb up on the walls there, and he had jars of string beans and potatoes and all the stuff from his garden in the mason jars that he didn't have in the refrigerator down there. When he was ready to eat, he would have all these on his walls. Okay? Then he had a little 2-burner stove in there, a little kerosene stove. Now, above the stove, here's one of the most fascinating things at Coral Castle, and this is what I love about his genius. Now, remember in Latvia, they didn't have the bugs. George, we've got cockroaches down here in Florida that fly. I mean, they look like, 747s.
Gosh.
Ed was not prepared for all these bugs. And in the old days, they had what they called a pie safe. And you put your food in this pie safe, but the bugs would still get in it. So Ed's solution to the bugs, he puts an iron cable up in the ceiling, and he builds his pie safe suspended in the air. Now, on this cable, about midway, he puts a funnel, and he attaches the funnel to the wire, and then he puts tar around the bottom of the funnel and fills it with kerosene. So here's the funnel in the middle of the wire. So a bug would have to crawl down the wire, and as he's trying to get to Ed's food, he drowns in the kerosene.
Brilliant.
So this was Ed's way of handling the bugs.
That was his own insect catcher.
His own insect, his own, I can't think of the name of the plant that catches the bugs, but
Venus flytrap.
Venus flytrap, thank you. And now his room, when you go up in there, we're only talking, George, about, I would say, it's probably 10 feet wide by, 8 feet long, 8 by 10, 10 by 10, something like that. Very, very Spartan. Had his food box